Okay, so today's lesson we're going to talk about, go ahead and start a new page in your notebook, and you can write simple interest. And the title of this lesson is When the Time is Not in Years. Because not every time that you're given is always going to be in years. Sometimes it's going to be in months. And we have to change our time if that's the case. Okay, now you were given a small piece of paper that looks similar to this chart. I want you to go ahead and glue that in. Miss Miller, if you need to stop the recording in order to give them time to do that, go ahead and do so. And then I'm going to go ahead and continue to teach. So pause it, and whenever you feel that they're ready, go ahead and begin. Okay, so just going back kind of as a review on some of the problems that we've done so far, is we're going to go ahead and fill in the rest of this table. If you'll notice at the top, the first line straight across gives us some amounts. And we know that we've got a principal amount of $2,455. So I fill that in my formula. Remember, my I stands for the interest that's earned. That's a dollar amount. The P stands for principal. That's the original amount that we started with. The R stands for a rate, and that's an interest rate. And remember, when we multiply that in our formula, we have to convert it to a decimal first. And then our time, and our time is given in years. Okay, so let's fill in what we know. We've got 2,455, and it's in the principal column. So we'll put that under P in our formula. It's 2,455. We know our interest rate is 3%. But again, remember, in order to multiply a percent by any number, we have to first convert it to a decimal. So 3% written as a decimal is 0.03. We do not know the time, so we're going to leave that just as T because it's the one thing that we don't know. And it's simple interest, that's the amount that's earned. And that, in this case, is $441.90. So we'll put that where interest goes. Okay, so now we're going to take our calculator, so go ahead and get yours out and get it ready. And we're going to follow along with what we know. We're going to do the operations that we can perform. And we know that we can go ahead and multiply 2,455 times 0.03. Go ahead and do that. And we get a total of $73.65. And time is still there, so we're still multiplying that by the time whenever we figure out what that is. And we still have not used our $441.90. So go ahead and put that, and be sure to include the equal sign. Okay, again, we know that $73.65 times some amount of time gives us $441.90. And since it's multiplying by a number that we don't know, we have to work backwards. The opposite operation to multiplication would be division. So I'm going to divide both sides by, I'm going to divide it by the $73.65. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm trying to get my time, my variable, completely by itself. And I know that when I multiply, or when I divide $73.65 by itself, it cancels out, or in this case it would give me what they call 1. So I know now that T is by itself. Now I'm going to put in my calculator. Numerator always goes first, no matter which one's the biggest or which one's the smallest. I'm going to do $441.90. And I'm going to divide that by $73.65. And you get a total of exactly 6. And so now I need to put that in terms of my problem. What does that 6 stand for in this problem? Okay, so I go back up to my chart and I put in 6, and we can abbreviate the term years, YRS. So that means if I go to the bank and I deposit $2,455, and the bank agrees to pay me an interest rate of 3%, which is quite high, by the way. It's not unusual. It's not usual to get that high of an interest rate. If I leave it in there for 6 years, the amount the bank will pay me in interest is $441.90. Okay, so that's just a recap of what we know. Okay, now what I want you to do is I want you to figure out the principal amount for this box right here, and you're going to work with your table partner. Okay, and remember, you also need to convert this interest rate into a decimal, so make sure you move the decimal 2 places toward the left. Okay, Ms. Miller, go ahead and pause the video and give them about 3 minutes to complete that and then check. Okay, hopefully most of you got that by this point, and you should have come up with a final answer of you had to deposit $5,200 in order to make $663. Okay, so now we're going to go on to this third one, and if you notice, this one's a little different than what we're used to seeing. Okay, this one shows a time in the matter of months. Well, we're not used to dealing with that. Typically, we deal with just years. So let's go ahead and just start filling in what we know. And we're going to use this same formula down at the bottom. Do we know an interest amount? And yes, we do. Our simple interest, the amount that we're making, is $1,942.50. Okay? Do we know our principal amount? And the answer to that, again, is yes. It's $18,500, which is a lot of money. Okay? And do we know an interest rate? And the answer to that is no. Right now, we don't know what our interest rate is. So we'll go ahead and put an R in there. Let me go ahead and make these blue so they stand out just a little bit more for your vision. Okay, and do we know a time? And yes, we do, except for we have a problem. This time is given to us in months instead of years. So we're going to have to convert that to a matter of years. And here's how we do that. Okay? If you have your calculator, your TI-31, this is going to be super simple. If you do not, and you're using the little blue calculators, this is going to be a little bit more difficult. Okay, so here's what I know. I know that I'm dealing with 42 months, right? Okay, so it's 42 months, and what I need to know is how many months are there in a year? And what would you tell me? You would tell me that there are 12 months in a year. So that goes 42 over 12. Okay, so if you're using your TI-30 that we've done in class, you can put this in just as a fraction, or you can simplify it. Okay, if we choose to simplify it, 42 divided by 12, we know, is going to be 3.5. Okay, so you can do either way. Only problem with this is sometimes when we get into decimals, they become kind of tricky. So you could do either one. If you don't have your TI-30 with you, you can use either one of these. Okay, now let's move on. Okay, so what can I do here that I already know? I know that I've got multiplication all on this side. So I can take 18,500 and I can multiply it by the fraction, or I can multiply it by 3.5. So go ahead and do that in your calculator, please. And once you've done that, you should get a total of 64,750. Okay? And we still have the R, so it's still times R, times our rate, because we don't know what our rate is. And our $1,942.50, that's still there, so we're just going to rewrite that. Okay, again, now this problem right here says 64,750 times some number that I do not know will give me $1,942.50. So what do I need to do to undo this multiplication? You got it. I do division on both sides. And what number am I going to divide by? You got it, the 64,750. And I'm going to do that on both sides of my equation. So 64,750 divided by itself will cancel out. And we still have R left over. It's the only thing we don't know right now. It's what we're solving for. And I want you to go ahead and do $1,942.50. Divide that by 64,750. And you should get a decimal, and that is quite okay if you do. In fact, you're supposed to. Hopefully, you got 0.03. Now remember that this is not a rate. Right now, this is not a rate. It's still just a decimal. So in your notebook, I want you to write yourself a note. I'm going to put it in red and I'm going to star it because it's super important. Remember to convert back to a percent. All caps the word percent because it's important. Right now it's just a decimal. So if I convert this back to a percent, it's a decimal right now. My final answer will be, hopefully you're telling me it will be 3%. Okay. Okay, so in your notebook, the one thing I do want you to include is on time conversions. So go ahead and put this in your notebook. Okay, if it's given to you, if a time is given to you in months, it's the number of months over 12. Okay, and if the amount is given to you in weeks, we're going to put the number of weeks over how many weeks are in a year? There are 52. And last but not least, if it's number of days, how many weeks? It's the number of days over how many days are in a year? 365. Okay, now what you're going to do is finish filling in the rest of this chart. You've got 2 more left, and I want you to work with your table partner. You're going to have 5 minutes to complete that. At the end, Miss Miller is going to check them with you. Those tables that get it correct get a general star. Okay, so once that's completed, you are going to flip your homework over from last night. On the back of that, you are going to see practice or 6-6, practice B. You are going to complete all of them. This assignment is going to be due first thing on Monday morning. Be prepared. We may enter our answers into the clicker and have them graded as a quiz grade. So be prepared. Remember, no credit if your work's not shown.